obviously for the Mets, it ended up in turbulence. So tell us first, what happened at the finish line with the team. We can ask about your spot too, but what happened? I mean, it's really not the finish line. It was over a pretty long stretch. You could call it a slow burn where the start was so electric and then the team ran out of gas.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a situation like this, there's a lot that goes wrong. You're not going to be able to just pinpoint one thing. I think first and foremost, I think the players and uniform personnel have to take the brunt of it. We felt like we had enough talent. It may have not have been, like the best equipped, balanced team. But as far as talent to get you to the playoffs, we felt like we had enough. So from a uniform personnel, we failed. To give you kind of more of an in-depth look of what happened, we just couldn't come together collectively as a group. The pitchers did really well in the first 2 months. The hitters were absent. The hitters got hot. The pitchers were absent. And then the defense kind of fell short towards the post All-Star break. So we just never came together, though we spent a lot of money. We had a lot of headlines. This game, which is why we all love baseball. You're not going to be able to just buy a World Series. Like, a lot of things have to go right. You got to develop. You got to have young players. You got to draft well. You got to make good acquisitions at the All-Star break. You got to make sure you don't trade the wrong guy to the wrong team. And everything we tried to do just kind of went wrong. But the players in the uniform and the staff in uniform have to take the brunt of that. And we definitely felt like we let the city down, and we definitely let the owner down. I mean, I have to speak volumes about the owner. Obviously I came up in Oakland, and, money wasn't thrown around at all. But for Mr. Cohen and his wife, Alex Cohen, tremendous owners. I had a blast there for 4 years. They treated the families like royalty. The food there, the staff there, the hotels, the travel, everything was first class. So to Mr. Cohen and Alex Cohen, I want to say thank you. They do a tremendous job there. And it's, any free agent, moving forward, it's a good place to be. There's good people that work there. And, for them, hopefully they can win a World Series pretty soon.
All right. So when you talked about the hitters and the pitchers, beginning of the year, the pitchers were hot.
Yep.
After that, the hitters were hot, the pitchers were not. Can you talk about that as a coach, that angst in the clubhouse, in the sense of, like, you're working with the hitters all day, flipping, talking to them, check out the iPad, and they're like, oh, man, we just scored 4. We're down 5-4 right now. Like, can you talk about that? And was that present? And how do you stop that to be able to move on and play together collectively as a group?
No, not at all. I mean, I can honestly say this, like the group of guys that we had in that room were true professionals. One of the things they always talked about in that clubhouse was having each other's back through thick and thin, and good times and bad times. I never heard any of those things. The pitchers weren't complaining about the hitters early in the year. And then when the pitchers struggled, I think the hitters were like, yeah, they picked us up for 2 months. We got to get it going. So it was a good clubhouse in that standpoint. I actually apologized in the beginning of the year to Hefner, our pitching coach. I was like, sorry, Hef, these guys will get going here pretty soon. And it's just one of those things. Baseball is a funny game. You could spend money, you can get all the good players you want, but clubhouse camaraderie. The year before we had Iglesias and JD Martinez that kind of unified that clubhouse. And you have to organically make those things happen. You can't just force them into a clubhouse. So those things have to happen organically. And I think with those two personalities, it was a great blend. And for whatever reason this year, though things were bad, we always felt like we were going to be able to kind of turn the switch on and get going. And it just never really happened. I feel bad for it. Like I said, Stearns made a lot of acquisitions for us at the break, and none of them really worked out that well. And we had a lot of injuries, like most teams do. But no matter what, we still feel like we had enough talent. We just could not get over the hump. We had moments of greatness where we'd go on a tear for about 2 weeks, and then we'd lose 8, 9 in a row. And we did that about 3 or 4 times this year. And it's just, you can't go through this type of losing streak. So, Yeah, it was unfortunate situation. I'm pulling for them. I love a lot of guys in this clubhouse, but they held it together. There was never no blame game. They did a really good job of keeping that under wraps and supporting each other through the season.
Xavi, what was Mendy like during this whole thing? I mean, we've had him
Great.
on here all the time, and he's fabulous. I mean, he came
Yep.
on. You guys were in the heat of it. Was he the same in the clubhouse every day? Because he seems like he never changes. He's always positive.
No.
He's always got everyone's back, and he believes.
Yeah, he was great. I think, you could tell that he was paying attention to Booney all those years in New York. Because, Booney gets hit hard. I absolutely love Booney. I was going to go work for the Yankees about 4 years back before I went with the Mets. And it was all I wanted to do was work with Booney because I knew the person, the personality, the consistency, and you could see all those traits that Carlos brought with him. And you could see why they chose Carlos to be the manager here. He's had a really tough go. Injuries and some of the pitching stuff, some of the highs and lows. It's been a really two difficult years for him. I know last year we went on that run, but we started the season, I think 0-5, 0-6 to start out his managerial career. We blew a lot of saves last year. He had to manage a bullpen. Our starters, they weren't going very deep. I think we used the most pitchers or relievers in the history of the game where we're shuffling in and out pitchers throughout the whole year. So he had to manage all this. And for this to be his first 2 years, I think he did a tremendous job. And I think he's got a tremendous future being a manager in this game.
What if you guys had gotten in? The what if? I mean, we're talking about this like you guys, a ton of coaches got axed and there's no playoff games. It's a big disappointment when you spend this much money. One game is all it would have taken. What if you guys had gotten in? What kind of path would it have taken for you guys? Because to me, looking at the pitching staff, it would have had to be some absolute pixie dust magic.
Yep. I can answer this honestly. Not enough. I think it would have been kind of scary because offensively, we were able to go on some tears and score some 8-9 runs. But when you're facing some of these pitchers that are in the playoffs, it's just not sustainable. To me, it's not an offensive league anymore. The pitchers are dominating. The stuff is too good. I heard you guys talking about the Brewers and Cubs and the Brewers or the Cubs not adding on runs. Like it's just not that easy. The mop-up guys that are coming in the fifth inning are throwing 100 with a 93-mile-an-hour slider. It's a very difficult game to be, to score runs. And I like what the Brewers and the Cubs have done with the pitching being so elite. This is the one thing. This is the only kind of trump card the offense has is to have some speed and to have guys that put contact on the baseball consistently. Now, if that comes with some homers, you can kind of see, even the Padres, somehow, bunting was a big no-no, and now it's become sexy again. Because I think people are realizing how hard it is to score runs, and runs are at a premium. Defense is at a premium. Running bases is at a premium. Outfield play is at a premium. Like everything offensively to score runs is at a premium. And it's not that easy to do. I mean, these pitchers, a couple of years ago, when I first got into this, guys were throwing extremely hard, but I didn't see a whole lot of control. Now it's like 100 dotted down and away at the corner, and I'm watching video, and it's pretty much what I do. And obviously, I go over the at bats with these guys, and I'm like, you guys had nothing to hit that at bat. Like it's hard. Usually, pitchers leave something over the middle of the plate, and they're dotting right, and they know every detail about the hitter. They know where he hits it, how hard he hits it. They know the weaknesses. They know his tendencies. Everything about this game is really focused for the pitching. We had defenses like we'd hit balls and the defense would be playing in the perfect position. And it's just something. It's just like, Jeremy Barnes and I, the old hitting coach with the Mets, we used to talk about this. Like we looked at our batting profile, and a lot of the time you're just kind of like hoping the ball finds grass, right? And there's a little luck factor to that. Like our batting profile was extremely good. Juan didn't have the best first 2 months. Every out Juan made was like 109 miles an hour. He had the worst luck of any hitter in the big leagues. And he was smashing balls. But the defense was right there. But, a lot of the times, like, you're really at the mercy of the ball just finding grass. And, the defense's positioning has gotten so good. The pitching's gotten so good. The one thing I did notice this year, more than any other year, where pitchers they have two fastballs now. They have the four-seam ride at the top, and they have a two-seam. So now, a guy like Juan, who covers the four-seam at the top, we had all our numbers. Like, if they had a two-seam, we knew Juan was going to get two seams, even though the four-seam was probably the better pitch for the pitcher. Juan did so well against those, but they had something to attack him with now. So, to me, it's a defensive game, and the way the Brewers and the Cubs have built their team. You talk about being consistent and competitive. Maybe not the sexiest offenses, but what a tremendous job they've done. I think this is how you're going to have to combat the pitching, because the pitching's not going anywhere. You look at Schlittler throwing 100 with a 94. Like I'm going, as a hitter, I'm going, I'm thinking the radar guns are wrong. Like, it's got to be wrong. Like, it's guys are throwing 104 with a 97 mile an hour slider. Like, it's just like, how is the human body even capable of doing that? But, to me, it's a pitching and defense game now. And, I think, I think GMs are going to have to act accordingly. And, if you've got a position player who can do both, those guys are always at a premium. But, defense and speed are going to come back into play. And as we've seen early in these playoffs, like, bunts they're a big thing, and it's coming back.
All right, I want to hit on one specific person. Obviously, it's the catcher's show. AJ left. He said, "You're the man," but he had to get on a flight. So
yep.
I talk about catching. The Mets don't make the playoffs. I talk about Francisco Alvarez. This is a guy that I think his energy behind the dish is infectious. You saw in the playoffs last year. He got sent down to AAA when he was struggling. Some of it was his defense. But when he came back, he was awesome. And I always think sometimes AAA can, like, guys get sent down to AAA, and it can be a detriment and it can be eyewash. Very rarely is it actual a thing. Did you see a difference when he came back, just in his overall Francisco Alvarez being the man for this team?
Yeah, for sure. And I love Alvy. I've told him 2 years ago, I think he hit 25 homers, and you looked at his batting profile, and there were some other things that weren't so sexy about it, but everybody falls in love with homers. Oh, 25 homers. This is great. And I kind of challenged him to be a complete hitter. And I told him, I said, you could be the best offensive catcher in this league, right? If you work on the right things. His defense at that time was tremendous. His throwing was really good. This offseason he revamped his swing. Players are always looking to get better. They're always looking for that next great thing. The way I view things as getting better is to be more consistent. Like, you are who you are as a player. All of us have God-given abilities, and you have to tap into those. I think what's wrong, kind of offensively is the social media hitting coach and the gurus that are out there. They're selling you something. There's this, hey, I got this one thing that'll make you a great hitter. And I don't view it like that. Hitting is way too hard. Each player has his own tool set, his own strengths, his own weaknesses. And you kind of have to work with that player in his realm of what he can do and can't do. I'm from the hitting side, I'm not a hitting guru. I don't have the magic pill to make you a great hitter. But what I do is I try to work with you. I try to get inside your mindset. I try to work with, let's talk about an approach and, make little adjustments as we go. But I don't have a magic pill to turn somebody into a 50 home run guy. I've never been a salesman like that. Hitting's too hard. I have too much respect for this league and the pitching. I did it for a really long time, and I knew how hard it was. And Alvy's it. He's got all the tool set. He can catch. He got off to with this swing, this spring training. He was starting to feel it kind of. He struggled, and he started to feel it, and then he had a hand injury, and he had a couple injuries through the season, and he just wasn't able to get it right. But then when they sent him down this last time, he got his head right. He was focused on the right things at the plate. He came back and he was the Alvarez we all think he can be. Now the tool set is there. Now it's just about repeating it and bringing your tool set to the game every single day. But I really do firmly believe if he puts it all together, he could be the best catcher in the league, but definitely the best offensive catcher in the league.
You're right at that time when you should think hitting wasn't hard anymore. Like I always say, 10 years after somebody retires, they're like, oh, I have all the answers. So I'm so glad to hear that hitting is really hard because you were really good. I sucked, and I knew that hitting was really hard. But my question for you mentioned Juan Soto. Juan Soto almost was 40-40. People really didn't even talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things against Juan, and as a hitting coach, did you ever have this conversation, is he doesn't chase out of the zone. When you have a guy in the middle of your lineup, can he get 130 stakes if he never chases out of the zone or he just passes the baton? I get it. In the long term of a season, like he's going to have the best numbers possible. Could he be a guy to chase out of the zone, or is that something you would never, ever tell an elite superstar to do because that's his superpower?
Really, Kratzy, really good question. I think there were times when, and I'll just be honest, I think there were times, where myself and I even talked to Carlos was, if we could just kind of get him to swing, maybe 0-0 or some pitches that he could do damage on early in the counts. But Juan is he is a precision hitter. I wouldn't get him out of his comfort zone at all. The one thing I would say, if you want to think outside the box and get creative, Shohei Ohtani's, along with Judgy and Cal Riley, the three best hitters in the game. Juan's up there. Shohei leads off. Juan is so good at getting on base. He's so selective. There are times when things are going and you're in the middle of the lineup, you're 3, 4, 5, like Pete Alonso, like we know Pete's going to chase, Pete's going to do damage. I think that you're kind of referencing driving in runs at a Juan could drive in 140. But instead of doing that, where you're telling him to get out of his comfort zone, slide him in the leadoff spot. He steals bases. He gets on base at a 40% clip. Don't have him get out of his comfort zone of what he likes to do, but you can be just as dynamic in the leadoff spot. If you look at Shohei and what he's done without changing the player too much, just changing where he hits in the batting lineup. Like it's, I know people, they're like, wherever you hit shouldn't really matter, but it really does matter. Like when we moved Lindor from the third slot into the leadoff slot where he's really comfortable, and he's really comfortable at the 1 or the 2 slot. Where a player hits does matter sometimes. Like there's some, there's an emotional tie to where you're at in the lineup, and not everybody can hit 3, 4, 5 in the lineup, and you have to have the right animals to do that. But I think with Juan's profile, and if you want to get creative and think out of the box, I think about leading them off.
I like it. All right. Last one. I want to get to the coaching staff in particular. Number one, and I know you've mentioned this before, thoughts on the way that the hitting coach setup was and how it should look differently for a team. And 2, Jeremy Hefner getting let go. I mean, I follow the Mets very closely. He was looked at as a top 3 pitching coach, pitching whisperer, the whole deal. So do you think that it was warranted?
No, I don't think any of the coaches should have been fired, to be honest with you. But understanding the nature of the beast and how things work, weeks prior to this, I knew this was coming. Is it fair? No. But when you sign up for this job, it's kind of what comes with it. You're in a big market like New York. The owner just spent $800 million. Your team better make some noise, right? Not even making the playoffs isn't even good enough. Like you better get deep and you better at least make it to the World Series. And so I saw this coming. No, it's not fair. The coaching staff we had was unbelievable. It's some of the guys that were there with me for the last 3 or 4 years. Things just didn't go our way. There's a lot of injuries, a lot of acquisitions that we had that didn't really pan out. But the coaching staff was steadfast. Like I'll go to bat for these guys any day. Matter of fact, I told Carlos the same thing at the end of the year when I was flying home. And I said, Carlos, I'll go to bat for you any day. The job you've done. There's a lot of things that go on that people aren't privy to. But a lot of things that need to stay in the clubhouse that don't really need to be out there that people will never know about. But the coaching staff we had, I'll go to the bat for them. They worked extremely hard. From the hitting standpoint, somebody had asked me, from the hitting department, if there's anything I would have changed. And Jeremy Barnes did a great job. Him and I did a really good job of speaking different languages, believing in different things, coming from two different worlds, and making it work together for the better of the group. And that was the conversation him and I always had. We never disagreed on anything, right? We might have looked at each other and go, man, this guy is full of it. Or I disagree with him. But whatever it was, we made sure that we brought it to the group that him and I were on the same page. The only thing that I had mentioned, and I think Jeremy would agree with this too, you cannot have two head hitting coaches. Like players get confused when there's multiple voices. From my standpoint, I try to give Jeremy kind of his space because he did so much, and the players were very accustomed to kind of him being in the leadership role. And then when I left to be the bench coach for that 1 year under Buck, and then I came back into the hitter's role, Jeremy had established himself and his voice. And so, to make it work, I kind of gave him his space. And moving forward, and I said this to Lindor a couple months back, I said, I'll never do the thing ever again. Like there should never be, things are set up when there's a head guy and assistant, when roles are defined, when there's one voice, I think is the best situation moving forward. But, whatever the Mets do, they're going to do. But I was asked that question. I said, the only thing probably that, needed to change was, I don't think two hitting coaches is the way to go.